And welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. We're talking about one of the Atari 2600 games, in fact one of the first. This is Surround, which came out in 1977 with the Atari 2600. It's one of the launch titles. One of the first 9, I think. In fact, I think the first bunch of cartridges just had numbers on them, if I recall correctly. And this would have been in that first numbered batch in the first 9. First of all, I have to apologize. The screen is a little flickery, as you can see there. Tried adjusting the camera as best I can, and it's about as good as I can get. This camera doesn't sync well with this old CRT tube, so it's gonna get a little nasty on the eyes at times. But there's a reason that I'm doing it this way. I could have used my PS4, which has the Atari Classics on it, and that would have looked a heck of a lot nicer. But I want to show off Surround warts and all because it is one of the ugliest looking games. But also B, there's a reason I want to be playing this particular one, which I'll get to later. Anyway, Surround is, the easiest way to describe it is Tron light cycles. And having just posted my video not too long ago about Tron on the Wii, it reminded me, oh yeah, I'd like to talk about Surround on the 2600. Now, again, apologies to your eyes about the flicker. I heard an interview with, I think it's Rob Crane, who created Pitfall, right? He had an interview with some guys, and they were talking about Activision and how one of the mandates that they did when they first formed Activision was to all agree on color schemes. They had specific colors that the 2600 could do that would display for water, for trees, for the leaves on the trees, etc. And having played this game quite a few times, I can see why. It seems like somebody at Atari was kind of just sitting back thinking, you know what, let's throw any mishmash of colors together. Some of them are really gaudy and very rough on the eyes. And this flicker isn't helping much, but you know what, it does, I think, lend itself well. Well, that's not so bad, that green color there. Anyway, yeah, so Surround is basically a Tron Light Cycles game, or Snake. You move your little dot around the screen, which I'm going to do in a minute, and try to make your opponent run into the trail left behind you. Now, what's really weird about this game is to play it, you actually put your controller into the number 2 position, or in other words, on the right-hand side. So it's a little bit of an unusual one for that. Now, game number 1 is a 2-player game, so I have to go to game number 2, but I'll just fire it up and show you against the regular AI what the game is like normally. So I'm the green guy at the bottom. Yeah, that blue and pink color scheme is really, really ugly. Oh, I think I've got him. Unless he can pull out of there. Ah, he's dead. What's really weird is if you win, the opposite score flickers. Like just there, you can see 0 for the red guy. Because he crashed, his score number actually lit up. And I think I'm in trouble unless I can turn around. There we go. So yeah, I don't quite understand why they did it that way. This is, again, we're talking early 2600 titles. They didn't quite figure out the rule set yet. So if you crash, your number flickers to indicate you're the one who died, if that makes any sense. Oh, we're both in trouble now. I don't know. There, I died, so I'm flickering. That last game actually shows one weird quirk with this, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but you can, if you're really lucky, cross your path with his. See, we actually intersected there, and I can actually, unlike the actual Tron Light Cycle game, if you hit it at exactly the right moment, you can actually cross into the other lane, or you can, hitting the wall isn't necessarily definitive death, like he's about to, oh wait, no, maybe not. Okay. Yeah, so, and there's actually a couple modes later on that I'll show you where you can actually cross each other's paths all the time, as if that's kind of intentional. Now, there's, I think, 14 variations on this cartridge. Most of them are like a 2-player and a single-player version of most of the same things. This is the standard game, and it's quite fun. It's enjoyable enough. But what I like to do is play the next one because it actually speeds up and it makes the challenge a heck of a lot harder. In fact, there's even a variation above that that I play all the time, and I highly recommend it. So this is the second game. Now I'm the blue guy at the bottom. And as you can see, we are actually speeding up as we play. Okay, I crashed, so my number flickers, which means he gets the point. Yeah, this is a much better challenge. This one I really like. In fact, this is the way I usually play it most of the time. This is game number 4, and in fact, in a minute, I'll just play a little bit of this to give you an idea of how much it speeds up. It's a really good challenge. I do like it. The color scheme, again, A, apologies for the flickers to your eyes, but also B, this gaudy green and pinkish red color are, yeah, just normal for the cartridge. I don't really understand why they did it this way, but it's their way of doing it, I suppose. Oh, darn it, hit the wall. Yeah, this is really good. I really like playing this game on this particular setting. I'll briefly show you the others, but honestly, if you want to have that light cycles experience, just play game number 4. Sometimes you can cross each other's streams like that. Oh, darn it. But instead, I'm going to now flick on the difficulty for the AI, which means player number 1, I have to put it into difficulty A, and that actually makes him a lot more challenging of an opponent. So you combine this speed factor with a much more challenging opponent, and it's a really good game of sort of Tron light cycles. This is the way to play it. Let me just take a second here, and I will switch the difficulty a level over. Now, you may not notice much of a difference here, but I can tell you the AI is a lot more challenging in this one. Combined with the speed up, it's a really good game of Tron light cycles. Now what I'm going to do is show you a couple of other variations of this game. There's some really nice things that you can do in Surround. It predates the Tron movie, and yet most people refer to this as Tron Light Cycles, as if it was somehow connected to the title or to the movie. It's not. This was a game. There were others. There was a Dominoes game in the arcade. There was also Snake variations that were going around the sort of home computer market, TRS-80s, etc. back at the time. So this was a well-known type of a game that existed up until then. Ooh, that was lucky. But as kind of the main surviving version of this Tron Light Cycles game, I think the 2600 one is one of the best. And also with the controller. I know there's Snafu for the Intellivision, which is a little bit nicer looking. Well, no, it's a lot nicer looking. It also has some interesting sound effects. It sounds like you're swishing your way through water. But I find with the Atari joystick, it's just a more intuitive system. I mean, I'm not sure which way the Intellivision works with it. Oh, he's going to die really quick. But I do like this sort of, it's very intuitive. Up, down, left, right. You just point in the direction you want to go. On this game, the button doesn't do anything, but then there are, in the later games, stuff you can do with the button, which I'll show you now. Here's game number 5. Unfortunately, you can't play against the AI. I'm just going to keep crashing, but I will show you briefly what happens in game 5. I can actually go on diagonals, and that makes a whole new strategy. In fact, you can actually dodge between the diagonals like a ribbon. But I don't know why, for some reason they made it so no AI could play this. So unfortunately, unless you've got somebody to place around with, number 2 and 4 are the only ones you're going to be able to enjoy. But the final mode I'll show you is actually number 14. You can actually move yourself around and you can draw stuff. It's kind of like somebody described it as being like Mario Paint, but the early like 1970s version. Essentially, I can move myself around, I can stop if I like to, I can move myself anywhere on the screen in diagonals if I like, and if you hold the button down, you kind of lift the pen off the paper, and then you can move yourself around. So you can actually make nice little pictures and drawings and that kind of stuff. It was just a neat little creative tool that existed back in a time before we had the ability to draw anything on screen. It was actually pretty neat. Now, to wrap things up, I'm actually going to bring up a hack that somebody did of Surround that looks a lot nicer. It's essentially the exact same game, and I'm going to be flipping to game number 4, but it actually uses the Tron color scheme. So here is that hack I was telling you about. This is a Tron color version of the Surround ROM. This is available on Atari Age. I'll put a link below in the description so you can download this for yourself. In addition to having just a much nicer color palette, it does have the same sound effects, but there's a little bit faster speed on this. Like, it just has that slightly nicer challenge level to it. So I really recommend it, and I honestly wish, had I known that Surround for the Atari 2600 was this game, this light cycle concept, which had been around in the arcades. I mean, I think I played that domino game. Had I been able to play it, I definitely would have got it a lot earlier in my collection. But now I can play this, and I can really enjoy the Tron kind of vibe that it gives. So if I'm ever tired of, hitting walls, if I'm ever wanting to play a more classic retro version of the light cycle game, I can. I'll just fire up this ROM on my Atari 2600 and just enjoy the Tron goodness. Alright, until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.